In this free crash course, you will learn how to use Figma Sites to design and publish a custom live website, turning a rough sketch into a fully functioning design for both desktop and mobile devices. Figma has become the industry standard for digital design, but with its new AI tools and publishing capability, it now promises to handle every step of the website creation process. No prior knowledge is required for this course, as I'm recording it with beginners in mind, but we are going to make a whistle-stop tour through the whole web design process, from designing to adding interactions to making our design responsive for different screen sizes, and finally publishing our website without ever leaving Figma. Let me be super honest about my goals for this course. I want you to get to the point where you can enjoy using Figma to design and publish websites, and perhaps even start using it in your job or charging for your services. And then you'll be so excited about the possibilities in web design, ready to take it to the next level and go professional, that you'll join me in the Flux Academy community on one of our in-depth courses, or on the Web Career Ignite program, which gives you everything you need to become a successful web designer. So let's get started. To follow along, install the fonts linked in the description of this video, and then grab the Figma Sites starter file. It's all explained down in the description. When you click on the Figma starter file link, it will open in your web browser and then prompt you to sign in if you're not, or sign up if you haven't. Once signed in, the file will open in browser or move over to the desktop app if you select that option. So the first thing we're going to do is duplicate this file. So if you go over to the top left here, where we have the name of this file, we're going to click on this down arrow next to it and then select the option duplicate. Click on that and you'll be able to see my key presses here, and in the bottom left corner we have my keystrokes as well on this little grey rectangle bar. So we've duplicated this file. Let's rename it. So click in here, you just call this whatever you want. Let's call this Figma Sites. Now we're going to click on the frame named desktop. You can also do that in the layers panel on the left. Then we're going to right click on it and choose the option copy to Figma Sites. And this is going to make a new Figma Sites file, which is currently untitled here. So let's rename that Figma Sites. Now we need to get the rest of our resources into there. So we're going to go over back to our design file by clicking on the tab at the top. Click on the supplied assets section. You can also select that again in the layers panel and just Command C to copy. And then we're just going to press Command V back in our Figma Sites file to paste it. Zoom out a couple of times by pressing Command and minus. I'm going to show you the zooming and moving around in a moment, but for now, let's just do that a couple of times, Control or Command minus. And then you can just click and drag this over to the side, the entire section. Then we'll go back to our design file, click on the tab at the top. We're going to go over to the sketch. I've selected it in the layout panel this time, Command C to copy. Back over to our Figma Sites file, Command V to paste, and just drag that over to the right hand side there. So these are our resources now within our Figma Sites file. I'm going to close the design file there tab just so we don't have a confusion between which is which, because they have the same name. And I've just collapsed the layer there and the layers panel. Let's dive into this actual file. So you can see there's some things in here to begin with. So let me show you around them. If you're totally unfamiliar with Figma, we're going to zoom in and out a lot. So to do that, we can either press Command or Control on the PC and plus, and you can see that on the bottom left, it actually showed the equals, so the plus being next to the equals on the Mac. And we've now zoomed into the level 50%. We can change that up here to 100%, or we can click on one of the actual items here in the layers panel and then do Shift 2 and zoom to selection. So we have here a frame for, this is a web page, then this is our home page here, and we have the desktop frame there. Then we have some supplied assets. So I'm going to press Shift 2 after selecting the layers panel, and it zooms over to there. So this is what we've got to work with. We have got these 8 images, and then we have some copy here. So this project is for a company called Sport Talent, and it's London's leading agency for pro athletes and athletic models, and you can book a model there. And then we're going to have 2 categories of models that can be booked: a map to the office and then a footer section. So this is enough to really show you the capabilities of Figma Sites. So the first thing that I would do in the process, having had all this information and obviously having a brief from the client about what they want, is to sketch out some layouts. And I would try lots of different layouts on paper and then a number of different ones in the software. For our purposes, we're going to move much quicker because the emphasis is on teaching you how to use this, not on creating, the most fabulous design of all time. So I've just made one quick sketch. So I'm just going to click on this layout sketch in the layers panel because I can't see it at the moment, and then just press Shift 2 and that will zoom to it. So this just, if we actually zoom out and just put this maybe next to our text here, you can see that we're just following this structure. I thought about maybe doing a big masthead for the logo, kind of look like a magazine. And I thought that would really fit with the editorial idea of using modeling and that kind of thing. And then we can have photos of lots of different models here to show a little bit of the range. We can use this headline here with a booking button. We've got 2 categories here. So we're going to 2 columns. Then we need a map and a footer. So that is our basic layout. So let's get into it. One thing that Figma Sites provides you with that is really helpful is different templates for whole pages or sections. If we go over to the top left again, there's an icon here which is a plus in a circle, and that is insert. You can see the shortcut is Shift I. Click on that, and then we have the option here to insert pages. If I just hover over that option, it gives me all these different sort of page structures that I can begin with, and then options for all these different sections: navigation, heroes, features, and embeds. So within navigation, I can already see some things a bit like what I might want. I'm not having a full navigation bar at the top, but I do have a footer. So let's click on this footer company long. We're going to click and hold down the left mouse button. You can see my circle there around my cursor indicates a key press, a mouse button press, sorry. I'm going to click and drag this into the desktop primary frame and let go. And that adds that in there instantly. So I'm just going to do Shift 2 to zoom over to there. So we've already got a footer that has been inserted with this whole layout, which is fantastic. So now we just need to change some of the text. So descriptive line about what your company does. Well, we've got that at the top here. So we could maybe just repeat that one. So I'm going to, just select that text and press Command C to copy it. And then I'm going to go into here. Now, if I press Command V, it's going to actually copy the formatting. I don't want that. So I'm going to press Command Z to undo that. And I'm going to press Shift Option Command, hold those buttons, and you can see those selected in Y in the bottom left. And then press V, and it will paste it in, matching the formatting of the text here. Don't worry about the fonts for now. We'll change them in a moment. Then we need some sort of different categories over here. We've got these social links as well. I think they're pretty sensible, really, in terms of Instagram, LinkedIn, X. That's maybe what we want, but you can edit those. So if I want to select one of these things, I can just click, and I've got this whole frame selected now. But on the left, I'm still on my insert menu, so I need to go to what's called File within Figma Sites, and I click on that, and that's actually going to show me all the different layers here that are laid out. Don't worry too much about these icons. I'll explain those as we go through, but let me show you how to edit these existing parts. It's as simple as just going and selecting something and deleting it or moving around. So we have these social links here. If we want to actually get into one of these selections, we can keep double clicking until we get down there. Or what we can also do is hold down Command, this is on the Mac, and then just hover over and press the one we want. So let's say we don't need a link to X. We're just going to use Instagram and LinkedIn for a modeling agency, which kind of makes sense. We select that here, and then it shows us here in the layers panel on the left what we've selected, which is this vector of the X logo. And that's within what we call a frame here. If I hover over the icon, it tells us what it is, a frame. That is called social link number 3. So I'm actually going to click on that whole frame there, and I'm just going to press backspace to delete that, and you see it just disappears, and now we have our 2 social links. So I'm going to do a similar thing over here, thinking about what we might need to do. We've got kind of the talent that people will want to see, and we might just have the generic sort of footer links as well, like we've got support. So we've got contact here, support, legal. Let's maybe just change those to, we can command click on support and maybe change that to privacy policy, and then maybe change legal to T&C. So that's just a case of typing in. I don't think we need these 3 columns, so I'm just going to delete one of them. So I'm going to click on column 2 here in the layers panel. You can see it's selected as well here on our canvas. And again, just press backspace and that's now deleted. So for this features category, and I'm going to zoom in, and another way we can do this is if we hold down the Z key. You can see that I'm doing that from the bottom left shortcut menu, and it's giving me this magnification icon. If I hold my mouse button down and drag, it gives me this rectangle that I can make any size I want. And when I let go of that, it will zoom to that level. When I let go of the mouse button, there we go. So let's command click on features, and I'm going to change this to talent. And I'm just going to change this category or this page. This would be athletes. This would maybe be models, and then maybe become a model in case people are there for that reason as well. And that's as quick as it is to change that around. Like I said, we'll change this namedly to the logo when we get to that point. That quickly we can edit these existing things, but we want to make this custom, and we want to edit it according to our own parameters. So I'm going to set up some grids here to help us align everything. I'm going to click on this frame, desktop primary, and then over in the bottom right here, it says layout guide. So I'm going to click the plus icon on that row to add layout guide. And then I'm going to change this from grid to columns. And we have a count here where I can change the number of columns that I want to see, however many you want. And I'm going to do 12, which is a commonly used number in design. And we can change the color here just by clicking on this swatch of our column grid, whatever we think is appropriate. We can change the opacity there. You can just push up and down, or you can type in a number, press tab, or you can hold down tab and press up and down to change that. And this is stretching it across the full width. I'm going to keep that setting, and I'm going to just make our margin 24 and our gutter 24 to begin with. So that's the 12 column grid that we're going to start off with. So now when we go to this footer section, we can see that this is not lined up with the columns that we want. And if we hover over this edge here, this margin, it tells us that there is a padding there of 64 pixels in that little blue box. Now where that is coming from is something called auto layout. So in Figma, you can either have things freeform on the canvas, which means you can just click and sort of drag them anywhere, or you can put them into auto layout. And that means that they will automatically be arranged according to the parameters you set into rows and columns. So in this instance, we have this 24 here at the side, 64, sorry. And that is coming from, if we go to the auto layout panel on the far right, we have here the left padding set at 64 and the right padding set at 64, the top padding at 0 and the bottom padding at 120. So what I'm going to do is actually change. I'm going to click on this one, which is individual padding icon. So I can just see the horizontal and vertical padding. And I'm going to change this to 0. Press tab to go into the next field. Press 0 again. Press tab again. So there's no padding there whatsoever. So you can see now this text is butting up right to the left hand edge here. With this being a white background, it's maybe a little bit difficult to see. We can actually change the background of our whole canvas with everything deselected just by clicking somewhere else on the canvas. We see here the background of the interface. If you click on that swatch and click and drag that down, we're getting a little bit of a more of a mid-gray, so we can see this white background there. Fantastic. Okay, so what I want to do is actually apply a margin here to my entire desktop, just as I have done on the guides. So I'm going to click on the desktop frame. And by the way, if these layers are getting messy for you, you can just close them by pressing this down arrow next to the icon there in the layers panel. You can also press Option L, the shortcut, to collapse the layers. So we've got desktop selected here, and you can see here that the horizontal padding is 0. So I'm just going to change that to 24. And then that now gives us that padding, if we hover over it, of 24 on each side. Fantastic. Let's go expand this desktop frame here, the layers, and then we'll click on this footer 1. I think that we can just rename this to footer. I just double clicked on that name. Looking at the spacing here, I think between these navigation columns here, this kind of sitemap, it's a little bit close. So what I can do is just click on this nav frame here, auto layout frame, and I can see that the gap between these two is 40. So I'm just going to increase that. So I'm going to hold shift while I push up, and it's going to go up in increments of 8 because I've actually set that in my own settings, which I'll show you now. So let's go with 80. If you go to click on the Figma icon in the top left, it tells you it's the main menu, and then we go down to preferences, and then the bottom item is nudge amount. So if you're starting in Figma, it probably says 1 for small nudge, which means when you press the arrow key, it will nudge things by 1 pixel, and then 10 for big nudge. So I recommend changing that to 8 to follow along with me. I'm using 8 pixel grid system. Okay, I would like this to be the font that we want to work with. Now, I've already selected some fonts so that you could download them and be able to follow along with me. So you should have downloaded and installed those fonts before launching Figma. If not, you can do that now. So I'm going to change all these fonts. So I want to select all this text here. So I'm going to hold Command again whilst clicking on an item, and then hold Shift and Command so I can select multiple. And I'm going to select all the different text here that we have, and then I'm going to change the font. So over on the right, because we have text selected, this typography panel has popped out, and the font name is Inter, and it mixed. We have different weights of Inter. That's the typeface. So we click on Inter, and then we type in the name of the font that you downloaded, which is Special Gothic, and we want this first one. That's just Special Gothic. Click on that. Fantastic. We only have regular weight here. And it tells us everything's mixed here. We're going to make sure this is all 16 for the point size. And the line height, we'll just leave that for now because these are all in separate lines, so that's fine. But I'll show you more about modifying typography shortly. But let's start with that. I'm pretty happy with that for now. And we'll add in some links and interactions later. Let's fly through adding some more sections into here. So going back to my sketch now, the next thing that we had above this footer section was a map. And handily, Figma Sites has a pre-built map. So if we go down to embeds, you can see that we can actually embed URLs of the web pages or HTML code. We can embed a YouTube video or a Google map. So let's click on that Google map and we'll drag it over. And I want this to go above this entire section. So I'm going to just drag it to the top here till I get that blue horizontal line. Then I'm going to let go. And we have a map. And it's actually brought it in within this footer, I think. No problem. We can fix that. We're going to go back over to our File tab. And then we're going to expand out this footer auto layout section. And you can see this embed 1 here. Now I'm going to change the name of this, double click on it and change it to map so that we know what we're working with. And then I'm just going to click and drag that out of that footer section in the layers panel and then let go with the mouse button. And then you see it drags it out of the structure and it brings it up to the top here. So I'm thinking, looking at this sketch, I want this to go across the full width. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So first of all, with this map selected, you can see here that we have all the options here for the map, the Google Map URL, the location setting, all that kind of thing, and the size of it. So with this option here for the width, it's currently set at 600 pixels. If we click on the down arrow, we can change that to fill container. And that means it will completely fill whatever frame it's inside horizontally. So, and we already have the aspect ratio locked. If I just click off, you see that on the right there. There's a little gray bar between the two. So I'm going to click on that and click fill container. And here, presto, it's filled it right across, but up to with our margins because we've set those on our desktop. So that's absolutely fantastic. We'll click on this map. This company's in London. So what we can maybe do actually is just delete this or add something to this query. So let's maybe put Kings plus Cross plus Station plus London. And it's put that as the location setting there. Now that's probably simple enough for this just to load. Now if we want to preview this web page at any time and see how it looks, we can click on this play icon here or use the shortcut Option Command Enter, which is the same as in Figma Design. And you can see there, bang, it's loaded us right onto King's Cross Station. So fantastic. That can be the address for this company. Great. So we've got a map already. This is cool. It's a proper Google map. It's interactive and we've embedded it on our site. Fantastic. Right. Next thing on the sketch, we have these couple of categories here for pro athletes and pro models. So let's get that into here. So we've got this text here and we want to do 2 columns. So let's have a look if we've got any good sort of sections that we can use. So we've got these features here on the insert menu. And this kind of goes in 2 sections, but it's not quite the way mine's laid out. We've got this one with 3 columns, but they're as cards, so we could try that. And there's a bento box. So there's all kind of different pre-made layouts here that we can sort of pick up. Let's just try one of them, see what happens. I'm going to click on this one of the cards. I'm going to drag this over here and let go. And then I'll go over to my file panel and just check it's gone in the right structure, which it has. I'm going to rename this to categories because that's what it says on our provided copy. And we've got 3 categories here, but we only want 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on card 3 in the layers panel and press backspace to delete that. Then I'm going to click on the whole top level layer of categories. I just want to zoom into this a little bit. So I'm going to press Shift 2 to just zoom in there. And then I'm going to go actually to 100%. So you can always press Command 0, which is the shortcut to just go to 100%. And by the way, if you're new in Figma, all the shortcuts are displayed, next to whenever you go and find something in a menu item. So you can work on remembering those. So we've got these categories here. Now it's inserting all this padding and spacing and stuff that I don't necessarily want. So I'm just going to go over here and make this 0. Now we probably do want some padding at the top and bottom. I'm going to change that to 80 for now, and then we'll maybe finesse that later. And then this item here is the horizontal gap between objects. So this will help illustrate auto layout a little bit. So if I shift and push up, you can see these cards kind of move away from each other or towards one another. I'm actually going to set this to 24 because that's what we set, if you remember, on our grid as the gutter between all the different columns. So let's do that. So I want, looking at my sketch, I think I'm going to have each of those be 50% of the width. So I want each of those to span over 6 columns. So I'm going to click on this card number 1. And the width is already set to fill container, but I've got a minimum and a maximum width here. So I'm just going to remove min and max from that one. And then click on card 2 in the layers panel. Same thing, go to the width, click on the down arrow and click remove min and max. And it's automatically now, because they're both set to fill, it is automatically calculated, the width of these so that they spread out. And I've got my 24 column gap there in between. Absolutely fantastic. I think this is going to be a little bit tall when I'm looking at these images. So I'm actually just going to unlock the aspect ratio here, and I'm going to change the height maybe to be the same as the width for now, 604. So that we've got a square image, and then I'm going to click again, unlock aspect ratio. Same on the other one. Command click to select the image, unlock the aspect ratio, change the height to 604, and then click again to lock the aspect ratio. Fantastic. So let's get some text into here. We've got professional athletes, so I'm going to double click on that, Command C, Command click to select this text, a small card, double click to select all the text, Shift Option Command V to paste it in and match the formatting. Same with professional models. And I want to change this copy as well. So I'm going to Command and Shift I'm holding while I'm clicking on these things. You can always see that in the bottom left if I don't call it out. Let's change the font again to Special Gothic. Fantastic. And I like how that looks straight away. Looks like this is, what's this, 18? Let's maybe change this to 16, our standard body copy. And these ones above, these headings, let's just select those. They're 24. Okay, I'm very happy with that. That's 50% larger than the one below. Let's just go back to 100%, which is always good practice when you're designing, just to get a feel of how things are looking. Right, we need to get some images in here and some text as well. So let's have a look at the images we've got. I'm going to click on this supplied assets section here in the layers panel, then press Shift 2 to go over there. I want two images that kind of work well together. So I'm thinking maybe these two ladies here, the tennis one and this woman on the bottom right, because the thing about these two is that I could probably do a similar sort of crop on the tennis as on the first one, and they're both kind of, looking down the lens, a similar sort of pose. So I think that'll sort of work well together. So I'm just going to Command C to copy those images. I'm just going to go over here to my panel and just press Command V so I can just have them somewhere nearby, and just clicking and dragging these things around. Okay, so professional athletes, professional models. Okay, so I think I'm going to use the tennis one as a model. It looks more like a campaign thing. It just kind of makes more sense. And this one could be an athlete that's in a different setting. So let's have a see how this image is done. It's just an image which is pulled into here, and it has a fill. So we can just drag our images kind of into that area and then make sure they're in the right place on the layers panel. So I'm just clicking to select this first image here. I'm going to hold my mouse button down and just drag it in here. You see we've kind of created a mess, but that's fine. I'm going to do the same with this other one here. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to do that first. What I think we should actually do is just get the crop similar first. So I'm just going to zoom into this area and think about how am I going to crop this. And this was square, wasn't it? 604 by 604. So let's get a square crop on this guy. It's 448 at the moment by 640. So if you click on the top and drag down here, you can see it will change. If you have aspect ratio unlocked, it will change the size of this image. You can also hold down Command while you click, and then it will just drag this sort of, so you're cropping it from the top. So think about the sort of crop that we want, a little bit of space above the head. We've got this building as well, so maybe there. And then from the bottom, we've got 448, so we need to make this up to 448. Fantastic. If you're not happy with this, you can just double click and you go into this crop menu here. And then I can hold down Shift so it doesn't move too much to the left and right. And just drag this up. Maybe just bring the hands in because it looks a bit weird how they're cut off. We can cut off that building. Okay, that's good for now. So this at the moment is a width of 448. Let's just make these correct, these ones. So that's 604. So I'm going to click on this image again. I'm going to lock the aspect ratio, and then I can type in here 604 and it will just scale that for me. Okay, with this image here, I'm also going to make the width of this 604. I'm going to go through the same process. I've selected the image. I'm going to hold down Command while I click and drag at the top. Maybe remove that tennis ball that's in the air. Similar amount of space above the head. Bring that up to there. And then I can hold down Command whilst I click and drag this. And this will actually snap to the image I've got next to it because I've lined them up. And that's now 604 by 604. Great. I'm happy with that. I'm going to click on this image again, this first one, and I'm just going to click and drag it in next to this other image here. But if it's not quite right, if we just press Option and L to collapse our layers again, with the one selected, it will leave those expanded. So we can see here we've got our image, which is named Visual Electric. That's where I got the images from. And we have this other one image. And if we click on that, and see we actually had these rounded corners, maybe we want to do that kind of thing. But we can mess with that later. So I've just got that original image selected. I'm just going to press backspace. And now I've got my new image in. Same with this other one. Just click and drag it into here. Click on here. And by the way, another way you can just change these images with the fill here is set to image. We can click on that swatch icon. And then you can click upload from computer and you can actually select any images that you've got saved to bring them into Figma that way. But I'm just going to press backspace and delete that. And now we have these two sat and they feel like they belong together. Now this text, we didn't have anything. We just said that these should be two different categories, but it seems strange that this isn't explained, these different categories. And it says here, call out a feature, benefit value. It's just got some generic text in there. So we want to change that. Now, Figma can help us do that. It has some AI writing features. So I'm just going to write something in here that's, very generic and poorly written and see if the AI can help us with that. So we just click on the actions menu here. And then if you don't see it, you can just type in part of rewrite this and then click on that. And hey presto, it's written something for us, which will work for now. We're making good progress so far, but I want to make sure that you'll have the confidence to tackle any web design project, not just copy me. So I'm leaving this little reminder here to check out my Flux Academy courses, core design skills, and Figma for web designers when you finish with this tutorial, because our students get free updates for life and personalized one-to-one mentoring to help you succeed. Now our layout is gone skew-if here because we have two lines of copy here and one line of copy on this side. Now we can fix that, and that is a problem that you do see on websites and templatized websites. So it's great that we have more options here than a lot of the template website builders, so we can easily fix that. So what's happening is these categories are, you see, it is aligning them from the center both horizontally and vertically. So if we change that to top center, we're now lining up the image and we're lining up the headline, and then any copy will extend below that no matter the kind of length of it. Fantastic. Let me show you a little bit of the typesetting here. Let's go back to make sure we're at 100%. If we command click this text, we can just choose these sort of options, and it's just like in a word processing software that you might choose, the size of the copy. This is what we call line height on the web, leading more correctly in graphic design. So if we start with 100%, that means 16 point on 16. And then you can hold shift and push it up, and it does this actually in 10 increments until you kind of get, where you like. So start with 130. Then we have here the letter spacing, which is the tracking. And we can change that back to 0, or you can kind of push down, push up, and kind of play with this. So I think -1 looks pretty good. So let's go with that. We need to also have some copy over this side. Okay, I don't love that copy. You should use a professional copywriter, but it will really help you get things started quickly. So that's a good start. We've got a couple of categories in there. Just looking at some of these spacings, just to make sure we do things properly. We've got here like a gap of 32 between the image and the text, but we've only got a gap of 24 in between the two columns. So I would suggest to make them associate, this gap should be the same or smaller, this vertical gap in each column. So if we just click on this card 1, you can see here that vertical gap between objects is 32. So I can hold shift and push down and just get to that to where I'm comfy with. And I think 16 just makes it feel a bit more connected. So I'm going to click on card 2 here and then change that to 16. And we go into that there. And if you feel like I'm scooting through some of the way auto layout works, I do have a full Figma design crash course available for free on our YouTube channel. And that sort of takes a little bit more time to explain to you how that works. Okay, so we'll finesse this, but I think we've got a decent start here with these sections. We've just got our hero section, which is obviously going to take longer and be more custom to get into. So first of all, we've got this masthead here. So we need to create a bit of a logo or something. So we have the word Sportalent, the company name here. So I've command click to select that. I'm going to hold down Option key on Mac or Alt on the PC whilst holding down the left mouse button, clicking and dragging that out just to make a copy. It's common in a lot of programs. I'm just going to zoom into that, Shift 2, and then let's zoom back out a little bit so I can just see it in view. And let's change the font. So we were using Special Gothic. Let's maybe try another one of the fonts from this typeface, Special Gothic Expanded. That's okay. And then we're going to make a copy of this, just the same process, Option and Shift. And I'm going to go into this little type settings button here. And you can see there's lots of different options here that we can choose to underline our text and strike through and all that kind of common thing. All right, let's maybe try this in uppercase. But already, I'm quite liking this. We can maybe play with the letter spacing. You know, kind of do it wider, do it narrower. I think this is pretty good. Let's not spend too long on it because it's for the purposes of this. We'll just do it -1. Okay. Fantastic. So I'm going to bring that in as a logo. Now, in general, with text on the web, we want to keep as much of it as possible in plain text so it can be read by screen readers and it's just more accessible and indexed by search engines. But in this case, with this being a logo and how I might need to manipulate it, and so I can show you this feature as well, I'm going to turn this just into vector shapes. So I'm going to hold down Option, click and drag another copy of this. And then I'm just going to do the shortcut, which I'll actually right click so I can show you. You can use this shortcut here, flatten, or this option. And then you can see here now that this is a vector. So if I click on this one, you see it's underlined and I can click in and type in there in the text. This one, it's now going around each of these shapes here. And if we look in the layers panel, we now have this vector icon next to it instead of these text ones here. Okay, so this vector, I'm going to rename this to Sportalent logo. And I am going to bring this into my design. So let's click and drag it down into our desktop primary sort of frame here. And we've got it up at the top here away from these categories. That's great. And then I also wanted it in the footer. If you remember, we didn't add that in here. So let's do that. Now, one thing we can do is just using the layers panel. We can keep opening the container till it's where we want to be. So we see here this where it says company. That's where we want this. So I'm going to click on the layer, Sportalent logo. I'm going to hold down Option and my left mouse button. Click and drag this into that company frame. And then I'm going to delete this namedly text. We'll go back to 100%. And we have that here in the footer. That's pretty good. We can change the size of it. I'll click on it there. We'll lock the aspect ratio, maybe the height. Let's just type in something from our system like 24. That's fine for me. Let's go with that for now. Go back up to the header. Looking at our sketch, I was thinking like a masthead that goes across the full width. So I'm actually just going to click on this and lock the aspect ratio and then change the width to fill container. And that was pretty much what I wanted. I'm happy with that. Noticing it's buttered right up to the top here. So I'm going to click on my desktop page here, the layout. And we've at the moment got a gap, horizontal padding of 24. Let's also add in a vertical padding of 24. There, that is fantastic. I notice I'm using this number 24 a lot. So let me show you a little bit of an advanced feature that's going to help us when we go into our responsive states. I'm going to make a variable for this. So with nothing selected here on the canvas, we have this option variables over on the right. So I'm going to click on the settings icon for that. And it tells me that I can create reusable numbers. That's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to click create variable and I want to do a number because I want this number 24 that I'm using everywhere to be used. So I'm going to change the name of this to margin. Okay, press enter and the value is 24. So now in places where I've got that 24, so if I click on this desktop frame again, I can hover over a number now because I've created a variable. When I hover over any field where I can put a number, it gives me this variable icon at the end and I can click apply variable and select margin. So now this is 24 still, but you can see it's in a white box, whereas on the vertical padding, it's not in a white box because that white box tells me it's coming from a variable. So I'm going to do that here. And then we're going to go into this categories here, and we had 24 in between the two. So I'm going to click apply variable and do margin. Then I'm going to also do that at the bottom here. Yeah, within the social links here, we have this gap of 24. So I can change this to margin. That's going to come in useful later and you will see that. So now we are getting pretty close, aren't we, to our sketch. Let's get in some more complicated bits and dive into some interactions and that kind of thing, which is much more custom, because a lot of what we've done today, you'd be able to find this kind of thing, very templated, web builders like Canva or Squarespace. We can do things completely custom because we're here in Figma Design. So let's do that. So we have a bunch of images in here and then we have, a line and a button. So let's get that in. So let's bring this line here, London's leading agency. I think we need to start with our text, maybe using some of our existing, sort of formatting. So I'm going to select this professional athletes headline here. I'm going to press Command C. And then I'm going to go and click on in the layers panel this Sport Talent logo. So it goes up there somewhere. And I'm going to press Command V just to paste that in. It's actually not pasted it there. It's pasted at the very bottom. But I'm just going to click and drag that up underneath my logo here. And we've got that text. So let's copy this text here and paste it in matching the formatting. I'm not going to repeat everything every single time. You see this width here is set to fill. I'm just going to change this here on the layout to auto width so it just wraps around however long the text is. And we want some sort of frame, around this hero section so that we can lay it out. So we'll need to do that momentarily. Then the next option there is book a model. So what I'm going to do, I'll just collapse my layers so we can see what I'm doing. We've got this text box selected here, London's leading agency. And I'm going to duplicate that. So I'm actually with it selected on the layers panel. I'm going to press Command D and that will duplicate one underneath. And then this text here, book a model. Let's copy that. Select into here. Let's paste, matching the formatting. We've got that there. So on my sketch, I was thinking about these maybe being in a line. So what I can do is select both of these things again in my layers panel. And then I can just press Shift A. And that shortcut will create an auto layout frame. Fantastic. So we'll maybe rename this frame to something like headline plus CTA, call to action. And then what I want to do with this is I want this width to fill the whole container. And you can see with our blue frame that we've done that now. I'll just go back to 100%. But I want this to be laid out at the moment. If we look at our options for different forms of layouts, it's vertical. So we've got one below that. I'm going to change this to horizontal. Okay, so now you can see they're next to each other. And then I'm going to change the space in between here space between, horizontal gap between all objects, to auto, which is going to push them out to either side and make an automatic gap in between of whatever that is supposed to be. Fantastic. So I think with this headline and CTA, we need a little bit of, more space around it. So maybe let's just play with this vertical spacing here and see, what kind of thing that we want to do. Let's maybe start with 80 again, like we had there. So that adds that 80 and 80, 160. Okay, and then we want to maybe have this text be a little bit larger, a little bit more impacting. So let's maybe go up to 32. Let's try that for now. And then we want to make this booker model look a bit more like a button. We want to make it into a button. So again, I'm going to press Shift A and create an auto layout frame. And what I'm going to do is fill this frame. So we have this fill layer here. I'm going to click that plus icon to add a fill, and you can bring any color in. For now, let's not worry too much about colors in this design, but here you can see this is how you select colors. We'll just bring it to black, and then I'm going to click on the text and then just change the fill of this to white so that we can see it. I'm going to make sure that the spacing around this is kind of equal. Let me just zoom into this guy. So with this text layer selected, I'm going to go to the typography settings here, bottom right, type settings. And I'm going to change the vertical trim from the standard text box that's set by the type designer to cap height to baseline, which is basically just going to crop it, as you can see, to the baseline, which is the line the type sits on, and then right here to the cap height at the top. So at the moment, there's no space around. If I click on this frame 1, which we'll rename in a moment. In fact, let's just do that now. We'll just call it BTN for button. We have no gap horizontally and vertically. So we can start to shift and up arrow, make a bit of a gap around. And this now is already looking more button-like. So let's see what else we could maybe do with that. We could put in some sort of icon with it. I think especially with these sort of flat black buttons, just making them look more button-like. So let me show you some of the vector tools as well. In here, you can draw geometric shapes. You can also draw custom things with a pen tool or a pencil tool. This is the kind of, deep illustration stuff that, we show in some of our other tutorials and on the course. But let's just select an arrow here. The shortcut for that is Shift L. We'll click on that and you can just click and drag to make an arrow wherever you want. Now, if I hold down Shift, it'll make sure that I only go at 45-degree angles. So we've got one going to the side here. So I've got an arrow now, and it gives me some options here. I can also change the width by typing into this box. Maybe start with 16. I can change the stroke width, which is the thickness of the line. If I just zoom into my arrow and push up here, you can see we can make a much bigger, kind of stroke. But we're going to start again with 2. And I'm going to drag this arrow, which you can see in my layers panel, arrow 1, into the button. Let's zoom to our button. It's black, so we can't see it. So we'll click on the arrow. We'll click on the stroke swatch. We're going to change that to white. Now we click on our button auto layout frame. We want to change this space in between. And we just kind of do this to the eye maybe. I'll do that as 24. Let's go back to 100%. I think to make this a bit more button-like, I might make this pill shape. So I'm going to click on the button, and we have in our appearance panel here, these options of the corner radius. So if I just push this up a little bit, you can see it's kind of getting these rounded corners. I'm actually going to type in, because once it's higher than the height of this, 55, it'll be fully pill shaped. But I'm going to type in 999. So we make sure it retains that pill shape with any resizing that we do. This now looks like it doesn't have enough space, at either side. It's maybe something like this. And we can just kind of begin to, finesse this. And now the arrow looks a bit weedy. So we can make this, kind of longer or whatever we think. I think what it is this terminal at the end I don't like. So I'm just going to change that to be rounded so it looks the same all the way through this button. So let's go with that. We've got 24 for the width and we've got 3 for our stroke. Now these things aren't lining up next to each other. And because if we go to this headline and CTA auto layout frame, you can see that this is vertically aligned at the top. So we can change that to align center. And now we have them vertically aligned centrally. Fantastic. Let's do our kind of final part of our layout, the images, and then we'll bring in some interactions and fun stuff like that. Let's see the other 6 images that we have here. I'm going to select all of them. I'm just going to press shift while I select these guys. Fantastic. Then I'm going to hold down option, click and drag them over here. Maybe above this hero is good. Just zoom into this area. Okay, so I want these kind of layered on top of one another. So they're going to have to be, sort of a, appropriate sizes to do that. So I'm just going to do a rough freeform layout here, sort of off canvas, and then see how that comes together. So that just involves literally clicking and dragging these things around. And then if you want to move something to the front or the back, so let's say I would like this gentleman to be on the front and underneath this image above, then you can just press the right square bracket and that will move it to the top. Left square bracket will move it to the very back. And if you just press Command and right square bracket, you can move it up sort of one layer at a time there. So we can go like behind one and the other. So that's we can also drag them around in the layers panel. So now I've selected the woman with the mirror ball. I can drag that underneath all of these other images. Let me just collapse my layers so you can see a little bit more. And that allows you to change that. Then to scale them, with any selected and the aspect ratio lock selected here, you can just click and sort of drag them. That's changed in Figma recently. You used to have to press K and go into the scale tool and do it from there. And where here you can also press, multiples to just make it 2x the size, half the size, or whatever. So that's how you scale things, drag them around and move them in different layers. I'm just going to speed up this next section while I just play around with this layout, and then you can sort of copy, the final version. I'm going to start with something like this. So you can just kind of copy this vaguely. It does not need to be exact. I just want it to look okay compositionally. It's supposed to feel kind of a little bit random, especially because I'm thinking we can make this move. So what I want to do is put all these things into a frame. So I'm just going to select all of them and then use the shortcut Option Command G, and that will just make a frame. You see it's named frame 1. This is a freeform frame. We can tell that in the layout here. It's got that icon freeform. We can change the auto layout, but we don't want to with this. And I'm going to rename this Hero Images. Okay, fantastic. And I want to bring that into my whole desktop layout here. So I'm just going to click and drag this thing down vaguely where it's going to go. And you can see here we've got the Sport Talent logo, and then we've got Hero Images below that. So this logo is coming out at 1232 for a width. I'm going to do the same here. I'm just zooming back to 100% there and make this 1232. But it's not scaled the whole thing, you see, because these images are within a frame. What you need to do with this is this time you do press K, and then I'm going to change this to 1232, and it will actually scale and grow all of the images there. Just turn our guides back on because we've just dragged it down within this desktop. It's sitting here in the middle with everything sort of, laid out, because our whole desktop layout is an auto layout going downwards, just reflecting how things work there on the web. And we already kind of have that in there. So that's beautiful. maybe just look at the sort of spacing and around this kind of thing. It looks okay. Maybe we want a bit more here. I'll go back to this top section, but first I just want to click on this categories, and I'm just going to increase this space in here so we have a bit more. Let's make that maybe 128 at the top and bottom. Certainly at the top, because we have some from this. Now, if we make that actually 120, because we had 80 in this section here, and then we can make the bottom one, if we just go to individual padding, 200, and then there's a bit more of a space as we scroll down towards this map here, which I think is better. Okay. So to create a bit of space in this thing as well, I'm going to go to our Sport Talent logo. I'm going to put that into an auto layout frame just by pressing Shift-A. And I'm going to rename this logo header or something. Let's call it masthead because that's what it looks like. And I'm going to change the padding on the bottom of that to 80. So it's the same as the gap we've got there. So maybe just design-wise, we could just finesse this a little bit more custom. We have this round edge here, with this pill, and we had that on the original card thing, and I'm thinking that might be, kind of an interesting thing to do or sort of bring through, so it just feels a bit more sort of custom. So I'm going to go into, each of these images here and select the actual image, deep select with Command and click. And I'm just going to change the rounding on these corners to something from our system. I think maybe just 8 subtly. Maybe add a stroke. Just at 1 pixel, that's black on the inside there. Let me show you how to do that again. Command click on the image, go to appearance, go into corner radius, type in 8, press tab, go to the stroke line, press the plus icon to add a stroke, and it's already set to black inside and 1 for the stroke weight. Okay, fantastic. We maybe want to do that with our map. Now with our map, just selecting this embed, it doesn't give us that option, so I need to put this into a frame. So again, Option Command G, I've made a frame. I'm going to rename this frame map. And then my appearance panel, I can just make that 8 for the rounder corners. And I can add a stroke that is black on the inside and 1. Now, if you look, we're not seeing that stroke and we're not seeing the rounder corners. And that's because we need to turn on this clip content, which means that whatever's included within that frame, it will kind of crop it off and clip it so it doesn't expand beyond. Okay, so then these are looking a bit more connected now and a bit less sort of template-like. We'll maybe do it with all these images at the top as well. We can actually select multiple images at the same time. I'm just holding down Command and Shift as I do that. And I'm going to change the appearance on all of them. I'm going to do it 8 round corner. All of them, I'm going to add that black inside 1 stroke as well. Okay, now let's preview this and have a quick look at how it looks. So we have got a unique kind of layout here. And we have done what we set out to do to begin with the wireframe. Now, all of this that we've done, really, we could have done in Figma Design, some of it a bit easier, except for bringing in, some of those site templates, but and having the map work. But those things, could be done with other sorts of templates. But now we can really turn this into a website. So a few things that I want to do for that. The first one is accessibility. Now, it's worth a disclaimer here that Figma Sites is not great with accessibility. This is just in beta, and I'm sure these sort of things will develop as we go through. But for now, you're not going to meet the highest standards of accessibility using Figma Sites. But there are some things we can do. So if we click on, let's start maybe with some text, actually. I'm going to go to some of this body copy text here and just press Command click to deep select it. And I've got a little bit of a sentence here. Now, they will see when something is selected, we have this accessibility panel option here. And I'm on this row and I'm going to click plus to add accessibility settings. Now, depending on the item that you have selected will depend what options pop up. So here, the only thing we've got is tag. But if I click on tag, it will tell me now, why not make this a P tag? Now, if you're not familiar with the way the web is built on HTML, all these different tags are a part of the structure of the website in the code that sort of wrap around each part. So what's happened at the moment is that every single thing we've created is just within what's called a div. And those div blocks aren't able to be read as or understood as anything different by things like search engines or screen readers. So we don't know what's what. So a P stands for paragraph. So that is the perfect tag for this text. And then we have H1 to 6, which is heading levels, heading 1 being the highest level, heading 2, etc. So what we can do now is just go through and select our different text and just make that as a P tag. So anything we think is just sort of at a body copy level, let's just give it a P tag. And we can do that with multiple at once. You see they're all there. And if I just select one of them, you'll see it's still there with accessibility tag. So let's go from the top again now. I think this is maybe our main headline that tells people what it's about. So we can, again, add accessibility settings, tag, and we change this to our H1. And then these can maybe be an H2. Maybe these two here can be an H3. Okay. And the other thing we can do towards accessibility is alt tags. And these are within images that for people who can't see the images, they tell them what it is. So let's just select one image to demonstrate this. I'm going to press Command and click. Then accessibility, you see now we have this different options. It's already tagged as an image, but if I click plus, it gives me this time the option of alt text. So if I click on that, I can type in here some alt text. So I could say female model. Let's say female tennis model. Now, you'll want to go through for the best accessibility and make this longer. You might say, holding a tennis ball on the court, modeling a fashion collection. You can make something a bit more descriptive so that people can actually understand what's here. And you'll want to go through and do this for every single image on any real website you build. But I won't copy that process because you don't need to see me do it again. Okay, that's accessibility. Now let's work on interactions. This can really make our website come to life. So let's have a look at some different things. So something like a button. When you roll over a button, you want something to happen so you know it's a button, not just, your sort of icon changing. So we can command click to select this button. Just make sure, I'll just collapse layers so I can see what I'm doing, that we just have this entire button auto layout frame selected. And then in the top right, we've always been on our design panel so far, but we can click on this interaction panel. And we can create different interactions here, like it linking to somewhere or certain scroll behavior. We're going to go to this interactions row, click on plus to add interaction, and it gives us all these different kinds of interactions. And let me show you a few of them. So we're going to go with hover effect. So we click on that. And then it gives us these different options, like we can scale this up so it becomes larger. We can reduce the opacity, all these different things. I think maybe let's just offset this. So let's maybe just push it up a few pixels. So let's do -4 on the y-axis, okay? And you can rotate it. And this where it says transition ease out and duration, this is just the type of animation curve that it does and how long this lasts for, which is 300 milliseconds. Okay, now we've done that, we've got the hover effect. It's called it shift. I just moved it in the y-axis. It's given that a name. If I now just press Option Command Enter to preview, if we hover over this button now, you can see it just subtly transitions to move up, over, off, over, off. Okay. So let's just do that again quickly. Maybe on our social icons, we'll click on one of these. Now I've got the whole vector here. I'm going to click on the frame. So everything around the frame, even from these little white parts in the corner, it will work. So I've got that selected. We're still on interaction panel, click plus, click hover effect. Maybe because these are smaller, we don't do it as much. Maybe do -2. I'm going to do the one next to it as well. This time I'll click social link in the layers panel, interactions, hover effect. Why? -2. And then option, command enter, or the play button. Let's go down to the footer. Hovering over these things, you can see they just shift up a little bit. Now play with this yourself on your screen. And these kind of interactions are just, much more pleasing to people and find that they want to interact with your website. And we can do that. It's something online. It's not a printed brochure. So definitely we make use of these things. Let's just have a look at a few more. It's kind of the modern thing for sections to sort of fade in one at a time. So maybe let's have a look at how that might work. So let's click on card 1, and then I'm going over in interactions. I'm going to click plus, and then I'm going to click reveal. And this, when it comes into view, that means when we scroll to that part, it will then fade in. Okay. And you can do crazy things, scaling in and sliding in from all sides. Do not go over the top with this stuff because it is naff when you do. Keep it subtle. We're going to start with a fade in. Exit, there's no sort of exit. Replay, I'm going to say no, disable replay, because if we have a replay, that means when we scroll back up, these things will all fade in again, and we don't want that. So we've created that now. That's absolutely fantastic. We can click on this configure option here, and it will actually give us this longer option. Like this is a 600 milliseconds at the moment, and you can actually add a delay before. So if we maybe do 200 for a delay, so just 0.2 of a second before that transition starts. Okay, so let's close that. Let's look at what that looks like. You see it just fade in there. Now the other one's not set. I think if that fades in after this one, that will look really cool. So we'll click on card 2. We'll go to interactions. We add an interaction. It's going to be reveal. We want it to fade in. We don't want it to replay. We're going to click on configure. So the duration we want to be the same, but we want to delay it probably until that one's coming in. So that was 200 plus 600, 800. So maybe on about 700. And then it starts. Let's try that. Yeah, and it feels like that comes just after, which is cool. I'm happy with that. We want to keep this subtle. You'd maybe do the same thing with the map. We don't want it to replay. And I'll just do all those exact same settings on the footer, on the whole thing, just for simplicity. Let's have a look at that whole thing. Yeah, it comes in pretty quick, but that's fine. We don't want it to be too over the top. You can always add some delays and play with that to your own taste. Fantastic. So we've got those hovers, we've got those interactions. Maybe let's have a look at one more just to make this, really take it over the top and show you how much more custom things can be in Figma Sites than in pure template web builders. So each of these images here, what I was thinking is they're kind of like cards. It'd be nice if they could parallax scroll, so move at different speeds. Well, we can do that straight away natively here in Figma Sites without any sort of custom code or anything like that. Sort of thing would take longer to program in some other ways of developing. So I've just collapsed my layers. So I'm just going to select one of these cards. Let's say this top one here. This image, and then I'm going to click interactions, and then we've got scroll parallax, and then basically we change the speed that this scrolls at relative to the rest of the page. So if this first one is at 100%, this woman here, maybe the second one over, we want that to go a different speed to that. So let's say 80%. And then the next one over, we'll maybe have that go faster. So let's maybe have that go 120%. And then the next one slower again, but different to these 180s. So let's maybe have this one go at 90. And then this one, let's maybe have this go at 140. And then this one, 75, we'll start with that. Okay. So then let's just preview that and see what it's like. So you can see these are all kind of moving at different speeds. Now, because we haven't got a lot of space, we're not really giving us much chance for that to, really shine through. We could maybe think about creating a little bit more space in between. But overall, it does give us that sense. Particularly you can see the feet of this model here, this really stylish photo and this light, kind of move at that different pace. And that just gives it a little bit of interest, something you can sort of play with yourself as well. I'm pretty happy with that. I think we've got something here to begin with, that relatively we've done quickly, given that I've been explaining everything that I've been doing. But obviously this is just for a desktop. What happens when this thing is, reduced in size, like onto a mobile phone? Whoops, this thing is all broken. So we need to make sure that this is responsive for all screen sizes. So before we do that, I want to just make use of the variable that we created earlier. So let's go back into variables, deselect everything, and then click here on open variables, the settings icon. So you see here that we had the name margin, the value was 24. What I want to do here is click on this plus icon at the far side to create a new variable mode. So now we have mode 1 and mode 2. So what I'm going to say is that for my desktop site, it's going to be 24. But for my mobile site, I want this value of the margin to be 16 pixels. Okay? Fantastic. So let's make a couple more breakpoints there. Now, the way we do this, we're on our home page here, is we click on this icon on the top right here, which is to add a breakpoint. And it gives us these different options here for tablet, for mobile, and custom. So let's add one for tablet, and then let's add one for mobile. Now, some of this is already kind of responsive, and the reason being, because we use this pre-made card section, it's thought that when it goes to mobile, it should change from this horizontal view here on desktop to a vertical view on mobile. So it's already kind of done that with the footer. It's done that with the cards. So to a degree, we've got, something in there that's already scaled and is kind of working. So we just need to sort of finesse what we have got right now and make sure that it works, across all the different sizes. So let's go through and do that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to mobile here, and I've got this column guide, and I'm going to change that to 2 columns. And for the margin, I'm going to change this to be my variable margin, which I could have done actually before we started these. So let me move that out of the way. So I've got 2 columns. The margin is set as the variable margin, and the gutter is the variable margin. So with this mobile frame selected, I'm going to go over to appearance, and there is this kind of color swatch type icon, swatchbook icon. I'm going to click on that. It says apply variable mode, collection 1. You can see I've got desktop or mobile. So I'm going to change that to mobile. And you see straight away the margins there changed, so that here on this outer mobile, these are now 16 for our padding. And that's already kind of lining things up better, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we can just go through this kind of brick by brick really and make sure it's all tidied up. So I'm going to go into the tablet option firstly. Here we still have, sort of our 12 columns and all that kind of thing. I'm going to select tablet. I'm going to go to layout guide. I'm going to click here on the layout guide settings icon. And again, I'm going to change this to 2. This margin should be from the variables on all the modes, but I'll do that here. Fantastic. My logo is already spanning across. That's fine. So are my images. Now this text is sort of sticking out. There's a few things I might want to do here. One is that this width is set to hug. I can change that to fill container so that it doesn't go beyond, and it's now breaking across different lines. So probably with the way this goes on tablet, could I have this still on one line? Maybe if the text was a little bit smaller. So if I make that 24, and then I'll go to my button text, I'll make that 24. And there's other ways to do this, by the way. You can have different button components and use those across, and that's things you can do in Figma. But let's carry on with this way for the moment. I'm just making here my button a little bit smaller on the tablet. I'm just gonna go with 28 and 20 for these gaps. I think here we could make this text even smaller and get everything on one line, but I'm not sure we need to or want to do that. So I'm just going to select this headline plus CTA and make sure this is aligning to the center. And then I'm going to click on this London's Leading, and I'm going to change this to auto width. I'm also just going to center align the text just for belt and braces here. And then this sort of layout works for me. I'm happy with that. And the gaps actually look pretty good to begin with. With this one, I think we can still be on a horizontal layout on tablet. So we can change that over to horizontal, make sure that's set to fill. This card 1 should be set to fill. The width of this image should be set to fill. Maybe we should have done that on desktop as well, actually. Change this image, that's the key part, to fill. Hey presto, I'm just going to go back to desktop, change that to fill. And that's already, kind of gone through. I think these type sizes are probably okay as well. Maybe this one looks a bit large now. Maybe do 20. Our map needs to resize. So this is set to fill container. This map here which makes the width 752. So I'm just going to change that as the width of this map here. And I'm going to change the height of this container to, I'm going to change this to an auto layout, this map. Then I can change the height to hug the contents, and the map itself I can change to fill container, so that will always work. And then here, let's scale this down a bit too much. We had this logo as a height of 24. I think that's still fine here on tablet. Going over to the mobile, let's just work on this from top to bottom. The word mark is going across the full width there. Maybe we don't need so much of a gap here. So I select this logo masthead, auto layout frame. The gap at the bottom is 80. Let's just divide that in 2. Then we'll go into the headline and CTA. Again, we've got 80 at the top and bottom. Let's divide that in 2. And this text, I think we can probably make all our text to a different size. Now, again, this is something where we could use a style that would help us do this across the different options. So I'm going to go into this first heading here on the desktop side. And then if we go over to typography, we have these 4 circles and it says apply styles. I'm going to click on that, and there's text styles, gives me an option of plus create style. And then I'm going to call this H1. And it tells me that we've now, because we've got different breakpoints, we wouldn't have been able to do this with breakpoints before. We can set it for the different breakpoints. So on desktop, this is going to be 32 point. On tablet, it's already noticed the thing we've done, 24. And you can even change, the letter spacing, because usually you want a narrower letter spacing with larger type. So the fact that you can edit this within these breakpoints is fantastic. So for mobile, let's take this down to maybe 16. And go with that. So maybe then we want to take this to -1 on the letter spacing. And then I'm going to click create style. and that's kind of updated right across. Fantastic. So let's just click on this heading here. I'm going to change this to auto height. I'm going to change the width to fill. Let me zoom in so you can see it. Select it again, and then I'm going to change the width to fill container. So again, we're going to have to just format this by moving that to the center and making sure that headline is CTA, this is line from the center, yeah, and then this booker model, that's huge as well. So let's also change this down to 16 and make this button a bit smaller just by firstly making the arrow a little bit smaller. Let's change the size of that to 16. Let's change the stroke to 1.5, 1.5, and going back to 100%. Let's click on the button, and I'm going a bit quicker now on purpose. You should be picking up what I'm doing, or you can watch it back if you feel it's going a little bit quick for you. Maybe just something like this is fine for now. I've used 24 and 16 for the padding, and we need a bit less padding between these items. Okay. And then we want this. Yeah, this next section is good, how it's going on to one column now. Let's make sure we don't have as much padding at the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to change this to 40, 80. I can just type in that comma there. And again, this text is too large. So let's just go to our typography styles. We don't have anything for body copy. I'm just going to actually just change these to 16. I think that's okay on mobile, where we just have this as black and then this as 60% black, just a bit less color, and that defines the sort of headline here. What we will need, I'll just do that with this next bit of text as well, change that to 16. What we will need is just a bit more space vertically, because these are two connected here. We want to know that these are separate things. So with all categories selected here, the space between, that was currently a variable, so we're going to delete that. I'm going to type in 16, and then we'll just start to push up. It probably wants to be similar to this sort of, double these spaces, so like double, triple, 120, 160, something like that, so it feels very separate, but part of the same thing. So I think maybe we'll just do 120. And then we have a map. Yeah, so we do want a bit more space there. Let's make that 120 as well, 160. The map, again, we need to do what we did on mobile. So we select this, the map itself this time, and we're going to change that to fill container. Fantastic. And all the other settings were correct from what we did on tablet, so we can leave that. There is now starting to get a little bit too much space. I don't mind that being close to the map because it's kind of associated, the address and then kind of all the information in the footer. But let's maybe reduce some of these other spaces in between here. So it's between the content and the nav, and then the nav itself. So I think the nav itself is okay, because you want to be able to press on these with your fingers, so you don't want them too close to each other. And maybe the whole space at the bottom. And then the space between these things here, which is currently 120, I can actually drag that. Hold shift and drag it in my increments. We make that 80. And then in the nav, the space between these two is currently 80. So maybe bring that down to 64. Okay, I think let's have a look at that and see how we're going. So we'll click back onto desktop. This is our desktop version. We've got our interactions working. We can click on tablet and see how this will. Obviously the rollovers won't work, in mobile, but things like the parallax scrolling and things will work. Fantastic. We've got a working map, and then into mobile. Yeah, you could maybe say on mobile you'd want to do a different layout with the images at the top, so a bit bigger, but so it's different when you're actually looking at the thing on screen. Maybe we have a little bit more space in here, but you know how to do all of those things now. So feel free to, kind of jump in and maybe think about you want some more space in this section and finesse that and get it to a place where you're sort of really happy with how all these numbers are looking. The last thing we want to do is actually publish this website now onto the internet. Now you can see there's a publish button right at the top here in the top left. So we just click publish, and then we need to give this a title. So I'm going to call it Sport Talent, and it says not published. It says we've got one issue to review. So we've got an unsupported vertical trim. So the way our button is rendered might look a little bit different. Okay. So then you simply click publish. And it says it might take a few minutes. And then once it does publish, it will give you a unique URL here, which is hosted on .figma.site. That didn't take long at all. I've not sped that up. Fantastic. We can now copy that to clipboard. Let's have a look at that in an external browser. Okay, and this is in browser. It's working. Now, there's things that we'll want to finesse when it comes to the responsiveness of this site. Like when we move down there into tablet, these images aren't filling the full width and things like that. But you can see that basically it's working. This is how it'd be when it's very narrow. And we've got a live website. If you now want a custom domain, you just click here, connect a domain, and we go into these settings, click connect a domain, and you just type in whatever the domain is. Let's say you had sporttalent.com, and then you click save, and then it will actually take you through the steps that you need to do with your domain provider to update the DNS records and everything to get a custom domain on there. And there are also more settings within here, within the site, that you'll want to do for accessibility. You'll want to give it a description here of what the site's about. And you can also add in, even a Google Analytics ID, so you can get analytics and stats on your website, which I think is really cool for a beta. You want to add a favicon, which is a little image you'll see next to the address in the browser, and a social sharing image. So if anybody shares this on a social site or message it to somebody, like an image will come up with that as well. And it tells you the dimensions you want there. And you can create all these things in Figma. I really recommend that you do all of this kind of thing if you are going to publish a live website that's going to be, used on the internet and not just something for, kind of prototyping purposes. Congratulations, you've just made a custom, responsive, interactive live website in no time at all, really. We've covered a lot in this free course, but if you want to really learn how to design in Figma at a professional level, then definitely have a look at Figma for Web Designers. It's comprehensive and systematic as we dive into advanced features and give you time to really understand everything that Figma design can do. Follow the link in the description of this video to check that out, and until next time, happy designing.